I don't really know which clip is more appropriate for this video. We've got "No One's Ever Really Gone" from episode 8.
No one's ever really gone.
Or "Somehow Palpatine Returned" from episode 9.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
And I say that because we got some really interesting Star Wars news about a project that's actually becoming pretty exciting. So, as reported by major trades including Variety and Deadline, Matt Smith will be playing the villain in the upcoming film Star Wars Starfighter. Why is this interesting aside from the fact that Matt Smith, in my opinion at least, is a really good actor? Well, he was originally supposed to play someone in the Rise of Skywalker. This was something leaked and rumored from really credible sources way before the film released. Leaks which otherwise ended up being mostly right. The Rise of Skywalker was, of course, a troubled production. JJ had to jump in after Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates script was essentially rejected, and it was clear episode 9 needed to head in a different direction, but even for JJ's movie, vast swaths were cut out. The Eye of the Webbish Bug, for example, and it certainly feels like they were figuring things out along the way and trying to cut together something which would at least work. So, who was Matt Smith supposed to play? Well, the original rumor was a young or perhaps rejuvenated Palpatine. When I first heard that rumor before the film actually released, my guess was that we would get some form of flashback to Palpatine's childhood, but obviously in hindsight it seems very possible that initially the film may have had Palpatine rejuvenated to a much younger form instead of the sort of Sith Eternal Emperor we get where he gets a different colored robe and reverses some of his damage. I actually really like Palpatine's look when he powers up in the movie, but I was admittedly bummed that we missed out on Matt Smith because, again, I quite like him as an actor, but now it seems worth it as he'll get to headline his own production. We'll get to that in just a second, but I do also want to mention that there were rumors that instead of being Palpatine himself, Matt Smith could be playing a Sith or Sith-adjacent feature, maybe a cultist, someone in the Sith Eternal, but although his name was long attached to the movie, I remember even back in late 2019, there was a real questioning of would he or wouldn't he actually make the final cut, and he didn't. As far as I'm aware, the man's only actually discussed his involvement with the franchise before this point a couple of times. He gave an interview with Joshua Horowitz. He said it was close to me being in it. The part I was imagined for became obsolete, but that it would have represented a big shift in the history of the franchise. I will say, in this clip, he also seems disappointed, so hopefully he's excited now. But let's get back to the man himself outside of his potential role in episode 9. He's certainly not new to the fandom space. I think for a lot of people, his role in House of the Dragon was a highlight. He's also obviously very, very well known for his time as the Doctor, but to be honest, he plays a good villain. And on that note, he is the basic Star Wars villain as well. And by that, I mean he's British. I am joking, but for real, Matt Smith will probably not be playing a reborn or rejuvenated Palpatine in Star Wars Starfighter. His role as some sort of Imperial does seem obvious. He often does have that prim, put-together look of a military officer. Yes, I was joking, but the British accent is stereotypically portrayed as an Imperial accent. I swear, though, if they do have him as some Palpatine strand cast failed, keeping the fight alive, I'm probably gonna have to quit Star Wars. But what do we know about Star Wars Starfighter? For one, it's still a while away. It's meant to release mid-2027. That could always change. I personally do think it will be a continuation of the sequel trilogy. I suspect we may see Rey, or at least hear of her, ditto with Oscar Isaac, if they can convince him to come back at least. But we do know specifically that the film takes place about 5 or 6 years after the Rise of Skywalker. Production starts soon. Hopefully we can learn a bit more at that point. There have been, I think, some more far-off rumors about it potentially being a character and their nephew trying to escape from villains, but I don't know whether those have any merit or not. Maybe the most interesting thing about Star Wars Starfighter, however, is the casting. This is easily, even with only 3 cast members, the most famous people we've had from outside the Star Wars brand, at least. Like, yes, the prequel trilogy did have Liam Neeson. The sequel trilogy, man, I really remember thinking before episode 7, Max von Sydow was going to be the villain, but obviously they had a mix of new and established names. But so far, for Star Wars Starfighter, we have 3 confirmed cast members. We have an A-list actor in Ryan Gosling. Also, I mean, one of my favorite actors right now, just from Blade Runner alone. We have Mia Goth, who is rapidly rising in the ranks. I watch a lot of horror movies, so I know her from Pearl and the movies in those series, but she also does have a role in The Odyssey, which could be massive. Then, of course, now also Matt Smith. 3 actors, certainly of different magnitudes, but which are generally well-known and generally well-liked. It's a different approach than what we've seen from Star Wars movies in the past. I do wonder if some of this is just due to changing box office dynamics. We've seen in other fandom spaces, comic book movies, for example. I thought both Fantastic Four and Superman were quite good. In the mid-2010s, those would have been billion-dollar movies. Now, they just don't have nearly the same power. The genre itself doesn't seem to have the same attractiveness to general audiences. So I do wonder whether Star Wars may be feeling this as well for the franchise, and for that reason is hoping star power puts butts in seats a bit more than has been the case in the past. Anyway, I'm excited for this movie, but I'll be more excited when we get to at least a trailer without stories of troubled production or questions about whether the film will actually release. But we'll end this video with a very quick hashtag Ask Ek. This comes from KJ07 Video, who says, can you please explain what was going on in the galaxy post-Thrawn but pre-Dark Empire? This was, of course, in Star Wars Legends. I will say you should check out the video I did all about the entire post-Endor timeline, but yes, keep in mind this is all stuff that happens not in novels or comics, but in the opening crawl of Dark Empire and source books like The Essential Guide to Warfare and the Dark Empire source book. Really, look up the Dark Empire source book, by the way, if you want a good look at the era, but this narrative didn't end up being very important because Star Wars ended up going with Thrawn instead, and Dark Empire is hardly ever mentioned in Legends. So keep in mind, Thrawn's campaign happened at the end of the Warlord era. The New Republic had faced down, and not without some scratches, beaten back various Imperial warlords. Some had retreated to their territory, others, like Zinj, were killed in action. The Dark Empire sourcebook explains that Palpatine revived shortly after his death at Endor. He watched the Thrawn campaign happening. Eventually, it seems like he reached out to powerful remaining warlords, as well as the Imperial Ruling Council, and created a coalition which met in the Deep Core. As the New Republic was fighting battles near the Outer Rim, this new Imperial coalition, secretly organized by Palpatine, launched an attack from the Deep Core to the core in the Inner Rim, recapturing planets like Coruscant. Again, Palpatine's return was not widely known by the galaxy. That would only happen during Operation Shadow Hand, when he came out with his super weapons, the World Devastators, the Eclipse, etc. But after this initial first attack, which essentially dethroned the New Republic, the Imperial Coalition split up. Various sourcebooks explain, yeah, this was Palpatine's doing. He was trying to purge the unworthy, and there's some cool descriptions in the Essential Guide to Warfare of super Star Destroyers fighting each other, torpedo spheres crashing into planets. You basically had the various arms of the Empire, including the different factions, the ISB, the Ruling Council, all fighting in a massive conflagration. That would all end when Palpatine reemerges, he makes his return known, and everyone basically falls in line, at least for a while. Hopefully that explains everything. That's all I've got for today. If you've got a question, leave it below with the hashtag AskEck, but that's all I've got for you today. Until next time, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.